Perfume Genius, Michael Hadreas, Ugly Season. New album from the man himself. A little bit of a history lesson on Michael. Debuted in 2010 with the album Learning, nice singer-songwriter chamber pop album that really showed him and his potential. And then he went on to release Put Your Back Into It, 2011, a beloved record by many, as well as his 2017 album No Shape. Set My Heart on Fire immediately was the album that followed right after in 2020, and a record that I reviewed on this channel. A little TLDR version of my review of that album is that I enjoyed the record, but I didn't really fully love it as some others did. Some people look at that record and think that is probably one of the better Perfume Genius projects. I genuinely think that No Shape and Put Your Back Into It are really good, in some respects even better than Set My Heart on Fire. And leaving Set My Heart on Fire, I was expecting and hoping for Mike to kind of make more lavish songs, put more bombast into his music, because I do appreciate that loudness that he can bring to a Perfume Genius track. There were definitely highlights on that record and lowlights as well, but I was going to listen to a new Perfume Genius record no matter what. So when I heard that this was going to be released, I was more excited than anything else. I was really hoping and praying that this is going to be either a stylistic shift or an embellishment on what he's been doing thus far. Now, even though I said I was hoping for something a little more left field, I did not expect this. I did not expect this from Ugly Season. This is by far one of the best experiences I've had with a Perfume Genius record, and I would dare say it is leaps and bounds better than anything he's put out thus far. This album reeks of the typical art pop sound that you hear from any Perfume Genius record, but it also incorporates experimental music, a little bit of classical music. So many different genre types can be laid out on some of these tracks, and there are elements of tribal house on a few songs. There are elements of ambient music. I'm also getting subtle hints of electroacoustic play on some of these songs too, especially the first two tracks. Some neo-psychedelic passages on the title track, as well as Hellbent, a really hellish song. And don't forget about the track Eye in the Wall, which this 8-minute monster manages to encapsulate both tribal house, ambient music, psychedelic music, all into one. And dare I say, do it flawlessly, like many of the songs on this project. Seriously, going into this project, I did not expect to be as impressed as I am sitting in front of y'all today, right now, as we speak, or as I speak and as you watch. Perfume Genius has gone left field and out of bounds, and really makes the listener think about what they're listening to. And to some people, that might be a turnoff. I get that 100%. I completely understand. Perfume Genius at this point has been making music that I wouldn't necessarily say is easy listening, but is palatable. Mike Hadreas on Ugly Season has taken his typical sound and thrown it into an experimental filter and has pulled out what could possibly be one of the best records of this year. A medley of sounds come together on this 10-track record that encompasses, again, neo-psych, classical music, art pop, and he's packed it into this 52-minute, mind-boggling, surreal, heady, in a some way vibrant project that is breathtaking, awe-inspiring, just wonderful in many regards, more than one. I'm going to start off by talking about the three sort of piano-stricken tracks on this project. Just a Room, the opening track, Scherzo, the 5th track on this project, and Cenote, which is the final track. These three tracks that some people might see as weak, I find to be some of the most breathtaking moments on this entire album. For one, these tracks can do so much with so little, and the soundscapes on these songs in particular, the sound design is immaculate. Just a Room starts off with these swelling string notes and this also very dark tone can't really place my finger on what it is exactly, but it's very dense. And Mike's vocal performance on this track and other tracks on this project too are very different than previous Perfume Genius songs. They're more breathy, they're quivering at some points, they're almost out of breath. The fullest his vocals sound on this album are on the song Hellbent, which I will get to later on in the review. And amidst the backdrop of a lot of these songs, it feels as if Michael is using his voice as more of an instrument rather than just a way to communicate with the listener and the artist. And this isn't the only instance on this album where this happens. On the song Herem, on the song Teeth, on the song Photograph, Back to Just a Room. This song in particular reminds me a lot of Tim Hecker for some reason. I don't exactly know why. Maybe it's because the sound design and the way this song just flows is similar to what Tim Hecker would do. I love me a good Tim Hecker album, I really do. Which is probably why I love this song so much. As an opening track to this project, so good. The strings drop towards the end of the first third of the song, and we get this very high-pitched piano note. And the song builds and builds and builds on top of it as we get to the end of the track. It just feels like it's growing and growing and growing, almost kind of like the anxiety or suspense is growing. And that happens more often than you might expect on this project. This album sometimes feels tense. It sometimes feels like you're sitting on the edge of your seat. Some songs capture this energy perfectly. Just a Room is a good example of that, as well as Herem, which is one of two really long songs on this project. But granted, these songs are not short. Herem, 7 minutes, Eye on the Wall, 8 minutes, Hellbent, almost 7 minutes as well. Mike wants you to sit and think about these songs. He wants you to sit and listen to them and really experience these songs. I'm gonna skip over Scherzo for now and talk about Cenote, which is the final track of this project. A beautiful way to end things off. The song features sparse piano notes that are accompanied by soft and whimsical synths in some regards. As the song progresses, it gets bolder and more beautiful. What Perfume Genius did to the end of this project and really kind of closing this album out on a nice and really comforting song is, in my opinion, very rewarding while listening to this project. It feels like you're finally at ease. Cenote puts you in that mindset, it puts you in that mentality, it puts you in that state so wonderfully. Onto the track Scherzo, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, a song that I would see as a lot of people saying it's the weakest song on this project, and I understand why. This song, compared to the others on this project, seems very vague, seems very empty, more sparse than the rest of the songs on this project. It seems very uneventful. However, within the track listing, it is dead set in the middle, track number 5. It is a nice point of sort of relaxation. However, there's this haunting beauty that permeates this track. It's a little eerie at some points with the very plinky piano notes that kind of get clustered towards the back end of the song. A haunting and eerie vocal sample that's playing just ever so slightly across the song. And the more chaotic the song gets towards the latter end of the track, really, again, puts you in this heightened sense of anxiousness and puts you in a suspenseful state. Man, these songs are very tense and put you in such a state. And I don't think I see a lot of people talk about that. I think Mike really did a great job, Michael and company did a great job at putting songs together that kind of make you feel uneasy. And he's put together songs and sounds that might be conventionally unattractive or might be not keen to the average listener, but he's done so in a way that can keep you engaged from front to back. Moving on to the songs that have more meat on the bones, I'm talking about Herem, Teeth, Pop Song, Ugly Season, Eye on the Wall, Photograph, and Hellbent. Each of these songs showcase different elements of sound that might be unique to one's runtime. What do I mean by that? The song Pop Song, for example, has these synth notes, more like synth plucks, that are playing throughout the track, and the song progresses to sound like a typical pop song in some regards. I mean, you know, look at the title. Ugly Season has these mind-melting guitars that are super psychedelic. In some respects, it sounds a little reggae-inspired. Hellbent is this heavy guitar-ridden track that is dark, it is menacing, it's brooding. Teeth is more of a fluttery and kind of almost joyous kind of tune as well. I can also get similar vibes off the track Photograph, but this song at this point in the record, which is track 8 of 10, feels a little less cheery and a little more grim. Herem, in my opinion, is kind of this deconstructed song that feels very progressive, very avant-garde. The structure of the song is vastly different from the rest of the songs on this album. Despite that, this song still holds an immense power to it. It has these amazing strings, this amazing deep horn. The tension that's built on the last leg of the track is immersive and incredible too. And throughout its 7-minute runtime, each minute, each second is justified because it's just as engaging as the rest of the songs on here. And the most ear-grabbing thing about this song is that eerie vocal sample that's being used throughout the entirety of the track. And what's interesting to note is that if you listen to the first half of the song and then the last half of the song, they sound almost like two different tracks. However, as this track progresses, you can hear that these two halves are combined in a way that feels seamless and put together almost flawlessly. Subtle horns are played in the background of this track as really the ambiance is front and center. And again, Michael's vocals on this track in particular feel more like an instrument rather than a way of communication. And lyrically throughout this entire project, I gotta say, some of these lines, they're vague, they're cryptic, a little mysterious as well, because very rarely on this project, only once, do you get a hook, really any form of song structure lyrically, definitive, fully written out verses. And I don't mind those. I don't mind vagueness in music if it means that I can at least appreciate and understand what's going on in the music. And that's exactly what's happening on Ugly Season. These songs are vague enough to be considered experimental, but full enough to be enjoyed by most anybody. And yes, this is going to be a very hard to get into record, and this is going to be upsetting for some Perfume Genius fans who really appreciate his other works, like Put Your Back Into It, No Shape, and his previous album. But even if you are a hardcore fan of Perfume Genius, you're going to like some of the songs on this album, especially some songs like Pop Song, or Teeth, which the latter of the two is probably one of the most beautiful songs that Perfume Genius has put out thus far in his catalog. It just sounds so mesmerizing with these hollow chimes playing in the background as he vocally delivers what, in my opinion, is one of the better vocal performances on this record. On the song, it does feel like he is using his voice to convey a message, but still doing so where it's used as an instrument and embellishing the rest of the production around it and the instrumentation around it. Obviously using each element of the production and the instrumentation to his benefit vocally. And man, I just find the vocal performance on this track in particular to be stunning, breathtaking. It's airy, it's quivering, it's almost, it's like he's on the verge of kind of either going into an emotional panic or an emotional breakdown. Michael's choice of using high and low notes are shown throughout the entire project. Throughout almost every single song, there is either a very, very, very high note or a very, very, very low note. Whether it's one note or many notes played in a sequence, you will find a high note somewhere within every single song on this project, or a low note. Notes that are not typically used in music all that often for their uncomfortable vibe or their ugly nature. Let me talk about Pop Song for a minute, because this is easily one of Michael's best songs yet. The synth plucks on this track might be very different from what you would hear on any typical pop song, but as this song progresses, they just make sense vocally when the high and low vocals are matched up in the second half of the song. Oh God, it's so good. The rhythms on this track and other tracks as well are phenomenal, very groovy, very almost heady. And the way Hadreas can coast out on these really gorgeous harmonies between the patterns, the drum patterns, the sample with vocals, the wondrous instrumentation as well. This isn't the only time that actually happens on this project too. Look at the track Eye in the Wall, which is this 8-minute tribal house psychedelic rager that in the last like 5 minutes has this kind of ambient piece that plays until the end, but it's ever evolving, ever changing, ever so slightly, to the point where it keeps your engagement until the very, very end. And even the first half of the song too is just immaculate, incredible, wonderful. And the rhythm on this track too is also hypnotic as well. Damn, it's so hypnotic. It's a very long song, but it's very deserving of its runtime. Speaking of hypnotizing, I gotta shout out the song Ugly Season, the title track to this album, because the guitars and just, God, this song in particular is just mesmerizing. It's eerie, it's waning back and forth, but there's also this strong, sensual vibe to this track as well, despite most of the lyrics on this album being quite cryptic, quite vague. This song really just feels very like intimate and sensual. Notice the tongue, notice the shape, don't look away. Notice the tongue, notice the shape, notice the tongue. Split black pit. I turn from God, slick with rot, thick as Vaseline, knee deep and filthy. I turn from love, I turn from solace. And however you interpret that is to each their own, but still, you cannot deny the sensual nature of the lyrics on this track, and even of the instrumental as well. And last but not least about this song in particular, it's undeniably groovy. Earlier I said Photograph and Teeth have very similar ideas running for them, but the placement of Photograph seems more grim in context with the track listing. And one of the main reasons why is because the horns on this track in particular seem a little out of tune. If they aren't, then that's completely fine, understandable. But the way the horns are just played throughout this track in particular really just makes this song a little unsettling, just a little bit, ever so slightly. And also the way the horns are piled on top of one another just makes this song way more enthralling. And the rhythm on this track is great too, and the vocals on the back end of the song are great too. Really, again, all around an amazing track from front to back, and one that introduces us to the song Hellbent, which to me is like both a thematic high point and low point on this record. And what do I mean by that? Thematically, it seems like the pinnacle of the album and what this album has reached, but in theory, it's the low point because it sees Michael lyrically being depressed and being in this state of despair, where he talks about Jason, a person that was mentioned on his previous album in the song Jason. Mike lost his phone, he needed to go to Jason's, he needed to get alone. He was phoneless, he was hellbent, he was illiterate. He's an Aquarius, which is the only definitive hook on this project, mind you. And on a song like this, the darkness, the brooding energy of this track is just so encompassing. It's suffocating. Again, the sound design on this entire project is immense, is spectacular. This song just shows off the darkness and the brooding depression that someone might be, at the pit of despair that someone might be in. And in the end, this song, like many others on this album, showcases an ugly beauty that you might not hear on many albums. Hell, many songs. And after listening to this project, I was left speechless. I was left hellbent, belligerent, phoneless Aquarius. Kidding, I'm not an Aquarius. But I was really left speechless. I was left with no words, jaw floor, and eyes widened, because I did not expect to enjoy a Mike Hadreas project as much as I do with Ugly Season. One of the biggest things about this record that I really like is the tension building that is showcased on many of the songs on here. Even if it isn't intentional, it to me feels that some of the songs on here just bring this vibe of suspense, like on the song Herem, or how the way the track listing flows from, you know, nice kind of ornate structured songs to Hellbent. And this album just feels like a monumental achievement for Michael and for music in general. I mean, I don't want to get too, you know, snobby or too, I guess, pretentious, but this record feels grand in the scheme of things, the scheme of music, scheme of art pop, the scheme of experimental music. And in the Mike Hadreas catalog, this is a left field, out of bounds record that I see in the same vein as Bjork's Medulla, and I really enjoy Medulla quite a bit, actually. Before I bore y'all with any extraneous details on this project that I would have to point down to a specific timestamp on these songs, I'm going to leave this review at that. And while it does feel like I should say more things about this album, I feel like I've talked for a very long time about why this project is such a damn good release. To sum things up, if I can, the sound design, the lyricism, even though it's a little vague, it still fits very well with the concept of this record. The progression of this album too, the way it builds on top of one another, the way it's suspenseful and it's immersive and it's eerie and beautiful at the same time. The way Michael uses these unconventional sounds to paint a wonderful and breathtaking, beautifully breathtaking picture. He dove headfirst into this experimental avant-garde sound, and he passed with flying colors. This album is nothing short of impressive, fantastic, amazing, wonderful, breathtaking, jaw-dropping. I mean, I can just rattle off numerous synonyms of other words, but I will just say that this record to me is a perfect A+. Yes, it's that damn good. It's that damn good. I really don't have any complaints with this album at all whatsoever. A little bit of an addendum from the outside. This album, if I didn't mention it, was made as a companion piece for a art piece called... It does feel like music for an art piece. However, I also think that each of these songs individually bring out one another very well, and the entire track listing just feels strangely holistic. And with every passing listen of this album, I still get a sense of joy. Strangely enough, I get a sense of enjoyment out of this. But also I feel like this album just is an immense musical moment for Michael, because it just feels so grand and it feels so large and it feels so almost epic at points. And again, it's a medley of different sounds and different genres coming together into this melting pot of a record, all coming together into this beautiful piece of music that is pretty monumental. And I think that's why I love it so much. It feels very important. And not that I would only give a record a perfect score because of how monumental it feels or how important it seems to the genre of music or the genre of something or whatever, but still, I can't get enough of this album. I will leave you all off on that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, comment, share, do whatever you want. Let me know how I can improve future videos down below. And remember, this is only my opinion, and you know the rest.